director is now full-time as opposed to part-time in the past. And, you'll recall that in March and in April, we, as the CDA and the village board, we're going to strategic plan together to identify what our goals are for economic development and housing, and then the priorities of how we're gonna try to address those. In the meantime, we've frozen the business loan program. And while there's business and developer recruitment that does occur by the bid, that's what bid directors do. So at this point, just for purposes of 2020, what we'd like to do is, we want a working relationship with the bid. We want to actually see what we can explore after our strategic planning to see how we can enhance our collaboration with each other, to have some strategic business goals. So what we're suggesting is that for purposes of 2020, while we're going through strategic planning, transition of new hires, and really kind of recalibrating a bit, that we just dial the facade agreement back to, dial the service agreement back to only administration of the facade grant program at this time, which is a need that we have internally to have this person do. Bart has been graciously doing all of that in the absence of a bid director, as they've been kind of working their way through their transition. And then what we'd like to do is come back when the new director is on board and we have a chance to kind of lay out some of the pieces we have on the table, kind of evaluate what we want to do, and then come back with a different agreement for 2021.
Yeah, I was okay with it, except for the compensation of $500 for each grant complete in accordance with the facade grant program, because like the sign grants are only $1,500, so, I mean, I could, if we amend that to like 500 for a facade grant and, $150 for a sign grant or something, I mean, we'd be paying a third of what we're,
Sure.
But I don't know, is it the same amount of work for them to do a sign grant as a regular one?
It typically is, because it's the same amount of paperwork, so it's the same amount of chasing to get, the 2 quotes, to get the insurance, to get the lien waivers. There's a little more review with the facade grants, that's for sure, because you're reviewing whether or not all the components qualify. With a sign, it's pretty clear, signs qualify. If it's a larger grant, you're somewhat reviewing it a little more, because you're saying, okay, only patio vertical elements qualify versus other kind of elements. So I think there's a little bit more work with the bigger facade grants, but in general, it's probably very similar on the administration standpoint, because it's the same amount of paperwork.
Yeah, it's a lot to be paying for a $1,500 grant. Maybe $250. I'd suggest.
How does the group feel about that suggestion?
So this is paid to who?
The bid board.
Who pays the bid director?
So it offsets the bid director's pay at that point?
Yeah, the CDA, I mean, from way before, as long as I've been coming to meetings, which is now 5 or 6 years, the CDA has always kicked in something to the bid every year. I don't know, maybe there wasn't a formal agreement, but there's always some money being paid to the bid for these, recruitment and other activities. Of course, the bid director is the bid director started already?
No, not until February 10th.
Oh, okay.
And so we, Trustee Menta is correct. We did not have an agreement with the bid that was written until 2017. And that actually stemmed from a memorandum of understanding that the CDA entered into with the village board. And as a part of that, I think the dynamic at that time is the bid said, or the board said, listen, if you're gonna contract or provide funds to a different agency, we wanna see a service agreement for that if it's 5,000 or over. And so that inherently is what brought this to the table. We do wanna have a collaborative relationship with the bid, and because there's a lot that we can do to support each other and to help the community. I think what you're hearing from me at this time is that to Joe's point before, I wanna know the specific business plan behind what we're doing for that versus just general supportive activity. So I wanna be able to see what our goals and objectives are, and then how we're gonna try to meet some metrics, within the scope of that. And I'm sure we'll be able to find those when, we have an opportunity to do the strategic planning, to meet the new bid director, to try to assess, some of her strengths and how we can best complement each other to really, do our best here for Shorewood.
And remind me, Rebecca, sorry, previously we paid them $60 an hour, was that the rate
Correct.
before?
Correct.
And Bart, can you give, so just, I don't know, a rough guess, the billable time for review, is it roughly 8 hours, is it less than, I'm curious if sort of where the 500
Yeah,
falls.
Yep, the 500 is in line with me. I would say it's between 5 and 10 typically. It honestly is way more back and forth than you would expect to get, documents that actually work, and compiling things and having meetings with people. So I would say between 5 to 10 meetings per grant is
5
appropriate.
to 10 hours, okay.
Do you hit
So-
the annual
so
limit
to
each
me-
year?
They have, correct.
Yes, yes.
Would switching it to 250 stop that, or you still hit the limit at 250?
It will depend on grant applications.
Best guess?
I would say no at
You
that
won't.
point,
Okay, so it would make an actual difference.
because that would require, 20 sign grants. We don't get 20 sign grants a year. What did we have last year, Mark? Maybe 8?
Eight or 9
Yeah,
total.
so if they were all at 500, that'd be $4,000, but if you got 10, or if we reduce it for signs, that would be a little less than, obviously, so,
How are you gonna pay for ones that are in process now? Like, you've already done 50% of the work, are we still gonna pay them $500?
No. Nothing that we've started administration of, we
Yeah, I
will
would
finish.
think anything in place now is under the.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut ahead of you.
Yep, nope, that's
but
fine.
No.
I'm still a little confused. Why are we paying what and for why?
Okay, thanks Wesley.
They like do, someone puts in an application, and then you have to talk to them, like, you meet the criteria, and then you review their application, and then they have to get all this paperwork, and you have to make sure.
I know, but who's supposed to be doing that? The bid
The
director?
bid director,
Correct.
correct.
Okay, and
So the
that's
bid
part of
director
their,
promotes the
that's
program.
part of their job description?
Yes.
No.
That's part of the
it's a
program
part-
description.
It's a part of this service
Agreement.
agreement that we have with the
Oh,
bid.
so they're doing it on our behalf?
Correct.
That's
Yeah,
why we're
yeah.
paying them?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, now this is making a little more
Yep.
sense.
And so I
Well,
feel like.
Sorry, I'm a little
To
slow
me,
this morning.
I like a fixed amount payment of the 500, and again, based on Bart's comment, I feel like the 500 is in line with historically what the $60 per hour rate would have been, so I think we have some protection on the top line. And as we know, some of these grants have taken a lot more meetings and a lot more time that can add up, so, and I feel like we should be, this temporary agreement should be in line with what we've done in the past, not kind of changing the parameters on them. So I like the 500. I think we should stick with that for this agreement.
Yeah, it seems like that's appropriate based on estimates of time and hourly rate that's typical.
I mean, if you just do a lump sum and say, here's $5,000 for a year for doing this program, then, I mean, that's a little more, well, that's another way of doing it that gets you away from somebody saying, why did you pay them this much money for a $1,500?
Yes, and so I'm happy that you mentioned that, because and Bart and I, when we were having the discussion, redlining this agreement, I said, well, people just wanna give them 5,000 because they wanna be partners, we can just give them 5,000. But in the
Ostensibly
future, when we come back to
becoming
2021, I will be recommending too that it's based upon some type of business plan that we
That's
have
right.
together,
Yeah.
because that's just the only way I work. That's what I do for you here, and so that's what I wanna do,
But
like.
in the future with the business recruitment and retention, are you gonna be asking for hours for, cause that has always just been, oh, you do business recruitment, here's $3,000, I mean, are you gonna be asking for hourly totals for work on that?
I think we're just gonna need to evaluate how we can best synergize together, and maybe that's not the best way. I mean, that's an inherently part of what they do. with or without us. That is a part of a
That's
bid
right.
district's role.
That's right.
So that's,
Yeah,
I guess that was part of the, when Bart and I both had kind of read the agreement, we were like, huh, yeah, that's what a bid director does. I'm not sure why there's a service agreement that actually speaks to that. But then when I looked at the history, we had had no service agreement since 2017. I mean, it's the first one. It was the first opportunity or that we had to kind of document what we were doing at the time. And what we've learned, no different than what we've learned with the facade program, is, hey, we may not like how that's set up in that way. So we're at an evaluation point of how to move forward with some of these items this year. So that's why we're recommending 1 year.
And I think it's just, where they are specifically facilitating a CDA program,
Mm-hmm.
that's where we're, the general business recruitment, I don't consider that sort of an official and specific CDA program. So in the future, I wouldn't expect that we're compensating some amount based on that amorphous activity. It's just going to be the listing new activities or new programs that we come up with that we're asking the bid to facilitate, work on, and administer. There should be some compensation to get for that. But it will be, to me, it'll be very specific program by program.
I mean, I wanna make a motion to move things along, but I do just wanna say, I mean, I know you guys are more, business world, and in government world, you do not look for grant administration to be more than like 10 or 15% of the amount of tax dollars that you're getting. I mean, that's the kind of thing that me as a government person would say, wow, we're paying a lot for a $1,500 grant, or that an auditor might say that is way above what a typical government program would pay for grant administration. So I'm gonna move that we modify section 2 to say we'll compensate the bid board rate of $500 for facade grants, and $250 for sign grants. So I'll make that motion.
Just to discuss that a little bit more, what you're saying, I think what you're saying might make sense when you're talking tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars of grant money.
You could argue the grant's just too small.
That's tiny amounts, so I'm not sure that really applies.
Well, you guys don't have people yelling at you about stuff like this.
But I get what you're saying.
I mean,
I mean, if you're talking about a $100,000 grant, yeah, you don't wanna be paying $50,000 to administer it. But on a $1,500 grant, to Bart's point, if it takes 10 hours to get this thing done, that's just kind of the way it is.
Yes, but
and you
it's
can't
not-
pay someone $10 an hour
But it's
to
not,
do that.
but it's not the bid director's job to get all the paperwork. It's not their job to get the estimates. It's not their job to, I mean, it's their job, I guess it's Bart, well, that's even Bart's job to put it on the DRB agenda and on here. The bid director won't, so her interaction with, is just, here's the checklist, give me the stuff, I'm not, anyway,
The solution
Well, I
is
thought-
just to drop the signage
she's not getting the estimates, she's not.
Well, I
So
thought
we
she
might be there
is.
next year.
She's
We might be
collecting
there.
them, and so to the
Yeah,
point
they
where
have to get the estimates.
she had,
Alright, so now I'm back to being confused.
we would both hand out,
Let's just drop the signage grant and then it's all done.
I thought we just said that the bid director is doing all that.
the bid director asks for all of that, and so.
But you're still doing all the work?
Well, in the interim, I'm doing it, but in
I know,
general,
but
the bid director's doing it.
let's not talk about the interim. Who's supposed to be doing what? Can we
So
please go over
the
that?
bid
'Cause now I'm
director,
confused.
the bid director asks the applicant to provide the information,
And does all the follow-up, and does all the back and
does
forth.
the chasing for the
Spends the
information.
10 hours.
Well,
Correct.
the applicant gets the information.
The applicant gets it from their sign contractor,
Yeah.
but then gives it to the director, who then says, this isn't complete, or this line item's not there, I can't understand what is actually being spent on the sign versus what's being spent on this.
Nothing's ever submitted.
And so,
correctly.
correct, that's the problem, is that you can ask the applicant to give you these two estimates and to give you the lien waiver and all this stuff and give your insurance. Then when you get it, you go, actually, your insurance doesn't have that, we're an additional insured, go back to your insurance company and get this. So it's the back and forth and chasing of us documenting that what we've gotten is what we asked for. To trustee Menta's point, the applicant is the one that should be, or that is providing it, we're reviewing it, saying, yes, it works, no, it doesn't work,
The
and
bid director is reviewing.
the bid director will be reviewing it, correct?
Right, but if it has to go to design review board or come here,
I do that, correct.
Bart writes
Right.
the little report and puts it on the agenda and brings
Right.
it to,
I think
But
you-
you're saying it's 5 to 10 hours for whoever is
Mm-hmm.
dealing with the applicant, the back and
Yep.
forth. That's what we're paying, and that's my point. That, if we gave them $250 and it's 5 to 10 hours of work for that person, then you're talking, you know, $20 an hour. It doesn't really make
I motion,
sense.
well, I don't
okay,
motion.
I made
This
a
is just
motion, is there a second to my motion?
No,
Okay, then it fails for lack of a second, that's fine.
I think we approve it as is, and then just drop the whole thing. If it's taking 10 hours to administer this thing, costing $500 to administer it, to give $1,500 to someone who doesn't need it, who would have just paid for it, is an epic waste of government time for a very little
Right, our
result.
sign grants are really $2,000, not $1,500.
And nobody needs them, so let's just drop it entirely.
So that is
No, I
why
mean
we're
it. It's a
looking
total
forward,
waste
no,
of-
but this
this
is why
is-
we
this
wanna
10
go
minutes
through
was a
this
total waste of time.
strategic planning, like, where are we at? Like, these were apparently.
We are wasting everyone's time with this. Less amount of more we could have paid for that sign instead of being here. I mean, it's so good if it's cost of doing business.
That's fine.
Because it exists, people apply for it, and it's an epic
Yeah.
waste of time, so. When we have our next
Okay.
meeting about that, let's drop it, I think.
So both
But
you.
for now, I motion to approve the language as is and move on.
All right, so we do have a motion,
Yes.
a second,
I will second that.
all right? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, I believe it passed.
Justy's abstaining.
Trustees abstain.
Okay, all right, sorry to cause discussion.
Sorry,
No,
no,
it's
it's
a
good.
good.
No,
I think it
I
needs to
think
be-
you guys hit on all of the
I
like
finally
really
have
great.
it clear in my mind what's going
points.
on.
Which
Sorry, I was so
later
dense
in a
there
couple
for a
months, we're
while,
gonna be
but-
coming back and saying, okay, now that you said you wanted to focus on X, Y,